Chuck Schumer, the U.S. Senate Majority Leader there. Well, for more on the story and the other business news of the day, let's cross over to Arise business correspondent Laurie Laird. Good to see you, Laurie. That was a very stark warning from Treasury Secretary Yellen. What is preventing Congress from reaching a deal to lift the debt ceiling?
You're right, Charles. Janet Yellen really was stark. And this is not a woman who's given to hyperbole. She had a message that she wanted to deliver, and she really is saying, Congress, please go and do something. This is the real deal. The U.S. could run out of money to a certain extent. So, yes, this is really what she is really trying to send a message. Of course, some Republicans don't believe her. Some Republicans have said that her warning that the debt ceiling could be reached on the 1st of June could be her exaggeration. The debt ceiling is an artificial construct, and it's Congress essentially saying how much the government can borrow. It can be removed with no repercussions. I don't know any other country in the world that has a legal debt ceiling. But what they are arguing over is actually pretty simple. The Democrats just want the debt ceiling to be either lifted or suspended altogether. The Republicans say, sure, we'll lift the debt ceiling, but what we want are spending cuts for future budgets. And they really want to cut funding to some of Joe Biden's signature products, like energy subsidies, like the ending of student debt, or the forgiving of student debt. These are policy issues that Biden's proud of, and he's probably not going to compromise on.
And Janet Yellen talked about a constitutional crisis. I mean, what does she mean by that?
Yeah, this is peculiar. And this is in so many debt ceiling negotiations, this is the first time I've heard this invoked. The 14th Amendment of the Constitution says that the U.S. debt must always be perceived as valid. It's, antiquated language. And there is some feeling that perhaps the use of the 14th Amendment may allow Congress, or may allow the government, to go over the debt ceiling. This has never been tried before. But the White House and Janet Yellen, when pressed, said, could you use this constitutional maneuver? They both said, we're not talking about it now, but nobody has ruled it out. But it's unclear whether that would be successful.
And I mean, we've seen this before, haven't we, Laurie? I mean, there was that standoff that went down to the wire in 2011, but Congress has raised the debt ceiling 78 times since 1960. I mean, is it more or less likely that the two parties will talk tough, but then agree something in the end?
I think the markets think exactly that, Charles, that this is a posturing before a deal is reached at the last minute. And that probably is the most likely outcome. But I think that we need to prepare for a different outcome for a number of reasons. This is the as polarized we've ever seen Capitol Hill. Republicans, Democrats can barely agree on what to eat for lunch, much less raising this debt ceiling. The other thing is Kevin McCarthy, the Republican Speaker of the House, his position is precarious. It took 25 votes to put him in that spot, and he had to agree to a lot of maneuvering. He can be removed on the say-so of one Republican member. So he really is beholden to the party. That may mean that he doesn't have room to make compromises. So I'm much more worried this time around, although the markets are really taking this in their stride, and I'm wondering if they're a little bit too complacent at the moment.
Well, let's paddle across to Europe, Laurie, to check in with one of the earlier stories we had, those reports that the EU is contemplating sanctions on Chinese companies that may be aiding the Russian war effort. What more can you tell us?
And a number of these companies have already been targeted by the U.S., but we know that the EU has a slightly easier attitude toward China, and the EU has certainly been very careful to keep trade links with China open. When Emmanuel Macron went to China, when Ursula von der Leyen, the head of the European Commission, went to China, they certainly had an easier attitude. They were reluctant to criticize China in the way that the U.S. has been because of these commercial relationships. Any sanctions would have to gain the agreement of all 27 member states. In this climate, particularly with growth slowing in much of Europe, I suspect it'll be very, very difficult to get 27 members on board. I wouldn't be surprised if this initiative drags on for some time.
Laurie, thanks very much indeed. Laurie Laird, Arise business correspondent, talking to me there from London.